used to go to high school. One of my neighbors, he was African American, and he every single day, he'd tell me, "I hate you because you're white." I'm just like, oh, all right, you know.
He's troubled man.
And he was like, "You're ugly" and stuff all the time to me, and I was like, you know,
And
what's
that
your
could have
problem,
been learned.
you know?
That could have been learned. He could have been taught that. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Same way that, whites could have been taught to perceive blacks or any person of color, but yet when you grew up, you have the power to either go with family tradition or do your own thing.
Yeah.
And take what you said, and then think about yourself if it was reversed. Okay, imagine how many people of color are told that they're ugly or that they don't feel like they belong. So just kind of reverse what you said and think about that, and it's kind of like how much they get, you know.
You keep talking about these privileged white people, but I think we should understand that there's white people that are living on the street every day, probably just as many as every other race. I think that in itself is a stereotype of white people, these privileged white people.
Finally,
They're-
someone's challenged it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that there are no white people on the street. That's not what I'm saying. The privilege that I'm talking about is
saying that we don't have any stereotypes, which is not true. There's people that grow up white every day that don't feel like they belong where they are.
well, there's, growing up, I mean, I'm a white gay man. Growing up, I've always thought that I didn't belong because I wasn't straight. So yeah, there are white people that don't feel belong, but it's not because of their race. That's what I'm saying.
I think some people do feel that way, though.
Like, you feel uncomfortable being white, you wish you
No,
were
I
white.
don't, but
No,
I
that's what we're
I know, I'm
talking
just
about.
saying, you're saying that they feel uncomfortable being their color and they wish they were another color.
Yeah, I think it's just that they feel uncomfortable growing up. I don't know if it's their color or what, but I mean, there are stereotypes on white people.
Yeah, there is a lot of stereotypes of white people, like white trash or whatever, That's
But
like
then
a
again,
really
we're going
huge
into
stereotype.
classism, that's lower class people that we consider white trash, people that live on the streets, we consider bums or hobos, or they have no life, they have no work ethic. We don't know their stories. It's talking to these people to figure out who they are, what led to them being on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to look at how many more shelters will take in a white person before they'll take in a black person.
I have a question for you. How do you feel about, oh my gosh, affirmative action? That kind of led into it. I mean, she was saying some people don't feel, being white is kind of detrimental to them sometimes because of when they brought in affirmative action. How do you feel about that?
We kind of already, we didn't talk about affirmative action, but you're kind of going off of the whole, did you want to say something, Kashani? Go ahead, you can go ahead, go first.
I mean, I think when we talk about affirmative action, I think a lot of people see that as reverse racism, right? That white people are actually disadvantaged because of their race. But I think it's important to recognize that affirmative action is about answering white privilege. And so most affirmative action programs are not, actually most affirmative action programs on the federal level actually have benefited white women more than they have people of color. But even so, you have white men who feel, I lost my, we all know the people who lost their job to an unqualified black man or Asian woman or whatever. There are all these unqualified people of color out there taking these jobs. And it's important, I think, to understand that affirmative action doesn't hire unqualified candidates. If you have two candidates on paper, it may be that the white person is more qualified, but that the person of color is still qualified to do that job. And if you think about what are the circumstances that led to that white man being more qualified, that's what affirmative action is answering in
Yeah.
certain ways,
Yeah.
right? And it is about answering white privilege. And I wanted to just say something, John, when you were saying earlier, all white people are racist, which is that's a controversial, a pretty bold statement.
Yeah, we saw that.
But I think it's important to sort of note that it's not about individuals necessarily, about you are racist or you are racist. If you are white, you are benefiting from white privilege. It may not be that you're rich and famous, we're not all Paris Hilton. Why I thought of Paris Hilton. It's
one of
the
those
sign
things
of
that
white
you have.
privilege.
She's not really white anymore. She's orange.
But it's
blonde hair, blue eyes, being a white woman.
right.
So that's automatically we assume rich person, Paris Hilton, or
She's not attractive.
She's not on her right now.
Hold on, Kishwani's not done.
White people benefit from white privilege, and that doesn't make you racist. But to deny that white privilege exists is racist,
Well,
right? I think.
I think what I was trying to say is that I don't think every white person is blatantly racist, okay? You can agree, disagree with me all you want. My belief is that every white person has done some form of unintentional, unaware racism.
So that's other races.
But I want to make a statement that also we perpetuate this white supremacy when we let discrimination happen. To me, that's racism. You're perpetuating it. You're allowing it to happen. You're fulfilling.
Kind of like if you see someone getting robbed, you just let it happen.
Yeah. So I know it is a very controversial statement, and a lot of you are thinking in your heads that I'm just sitting up here and I'm crazy. But I'll tell you what, I'm sure if I hang out with you for, at least a week, and if I really knew you, I can point out some of your racism. Because I catch myself all the time. I'm sitting up here as an activist trying to fight discrimination, but yet I still have to deal with my own racism. I will sit here and tell you I'm racist myself. I try really hard to work on that. But it's going to take all of us to take a look at ourselves, realize our privilege, and sometimes, as hard as it may be, to kind of give up our privilege to stand up for racism. When you get pulled over and the cop lets you go without a ticket and just gives you a warning, maybe you should say something like, actually, I think I will take that ticket. I'm serious, because if it was a person of color, would they have gotten off with a warning?
oh,
I'm